Hey guys, welcome to GFN Gaming. I'm Russ and today's video is going to be about painting power weapons using an airbrush. Much like skinning a cat, there's many different ways of painting power weapons. This is a mix here of using the glaze technique and a few airbrush, but today's video is going to be focused on the airbrush technique. There's much to be said about the airbrush versus the glaze technique. The glaze gives you more control, but if you're doing a large number of troops, your airbrush is probably going to save you time. Regardless, we're going to prime here. In this instance, we're going to be priming with just a grey. In case you're looking for a good grey primer, I'm using the Vallejo grey primer. I'm doing it through the airbrush, and I'm also using a bit of Vallejo's airbrush thinner as well. I would say that doing all of this just for one power weapon is probably a little bit wasteful on your resources. But if you're doing a couple or a squad, it's probably a little bit more effective the more you're doing, basically. Okay, now we've got them primed. We're just going to go on the first coat and we're going to use a white. It can be any white really, but I'm using this scale 75 white. Again, I'm mixing this with a bit of the airbrush thinner, mixing it in the pot, and then to make sure it's gone through, I will hold my finger over or block the end of the airbrush and just press the air just to cause these bubbles to mix the paint again. Again, you'll probably be doing these in batch, so make sure you get a nice clean coat of the white or whatever is going to be your lightest colour. Once that's all done, I generally like to put a bit of varnish on, a bit of gloss varnish to give it a nice surface, a nice even surface. Plus we're going to be putting tape on this and we want the white to stay. Again, using some of that thinner just to make sure it's not too thick. And once you've got a nice coat, we'll move on to the taping part, which is arguably just the worst part. Bit fiddly, bit annoying. Generally just use some, if you can get low tack modeling masking tape specifically, use that. I actually start this video without enough to finish it, so I have to move on to different tape, so, you know, be better than me. Again, you're probably doing these in batches, so you've been taping a whole load of these, but once you're done, we'll be moving on to the second colour, which will be the second lightest. In this instance, I'm using Vallejo's game color, Electric Blue. So at this time, you need to decide which part's going to be the lightest edge, and then you'll be reversing that for the other side that you've taped up. So in this instance, I'm having the top of the blade on this side being the lightest side. So we're spraying the blue on everywhere, missing the top part. Once you've got a nice coat that you like, we'll move on to the second colour. It's going to be by Vallejo Game Colour and it is Ultramarine Blue. You can have a play around with mixing this colour with the previous colour to get an in-between tone. Generally, I don't clear out the pots in between. If there's a little bit left, I'll just add the next colour in and then a bit more thinner. Same as the last step, we're just going to use the airbrush to paint the lower half of the blade, leaving that light blue and white towards the top. Last step will be to add the darkest colour, so I'm just going to add a couple of drops of black to the blue mix we've got already. I'm using the model colour Black by Vallejo. With this final colour step, you really just want to be hitting the very end of the sword, like a mirror of the white at the top. And that's it for this side of the sword. Now for the fun part, we get to take the tape off. Can be quite tense, but that's a nice clean line. Before we tape up the newly painted side, we're just going to put some varnish on there to make sure we don't pull that paint job off when we take the tape off. And then you're back to phase one again, only this time you're going to tape up the side you've just painted. Mix some thinner in with your lightest colour, this is the light blue that we're using, and then start painting the sword, this time leaving the white in the opposite area. So at this stage we're going to put the white at the very bottom near the hilt. Doing the exact same thing with the ultramarine blue or your mid-tone, again leaving that blue towards the hilt of the sword this time. Mixing in a bit of black with that blue, and then we're going to hit the furthest point of the blade with the darkest colour. And that's pretty much it. Now for the white knuckle thrill ride that is taking off the tape and hoping that it's not going to rip off the paint job. Again, you can find pretty good low tack masking tape in like a hobby shop, so I would use that rather than what I'm using here. Now, depending on what you're wanting this for, that could be you done, but generally I would say doing a nice edge highlight with a white really just completes the sword, makes it pop. Best method to get a good effect is to water down the white quite a bit and then just run the edge of the brush against the edge of the blade. It's a little bit more difficult on the middle, but you can still hit that edge if it's one of these type of blades. You can kind of run it along the middle and also pick up that line down the center of the blade as well. And that's it really. The most difficult part is really the taping. Depending on how you want the finish to look, you can either do a coat with a gloss varnish or a matte varnish. I prefer the matte look, so I'm going to just do some matte varnish. You can do this in the airbrush, but for the sake of ease here, I'm just going to use a brush. Thanks so much for watching. If you've made it this far, please like if you like these kind of videos and subscribe. It all helps out the channel. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.